Welcome to Dark Horse Workshop, everybody. Today we're just going to make a biker wallet slash long wallet, whatever you want to call it, and we're going to get started right away. Remember that you can get all the patterns and artwork for my projects on my website, link in the description down below. You can also get the same patterns and artwork on the month they were released on my Patreon, so have a look at that. And hey, if you're looking for tools and supplies, I've got you covered. There's links in the description of this video, as well as a large curated list of tools, supplies, hardware, etc. on my website, darkhorseworkshop.com. If we're going to do some leather carving, vegetable tanned leather is a must. You need to wet the leather and then let it dry enough so that it's kind of cool to the touch. Then we're going to use our stylus and our stencil and imprint the leather with our design. You can print the stencil with a laser printer onto some tracing film, or you can trace your image onto the tracing film. We're going to take our swivel knife, do all our cuts, and then after that we're going to bevel everything. Now, beveling is going to take quite a while because there's so many lines on this, but it all pays off in the end. It looks really slick. If you find that in your beveling it's getting a lot of separation between your strokes, so it looks really janky, for lack of a better term, you're either too wet or hitting unevenly. So let it dry a little more and then just work over the same spot. You can even rub your beveler back and forth a little bit to help smooth it out. Now I want this carving to really pop, so I'm going to paint it with dye. You have to be really careful. Don't load your brush too much because it could either drop down onto your project where you don't want it, or it could bleed into where you don't want it. So just be careful. Now, if that does happen, there are a couple of options. Sanding is not one of them. Don't sand your project. You can antique it, which you should be doing anyways if you've done some carving. You should be putting resist on it and antiquing your project, which will blend away some of those marks. Or on the other hand, you can paint. After everything else is done, you can match the color and paint over those little spots. Now, after I've finished the dye job, I'm going to apply some oil, let that dry, and then apply my finish. I'm using Resolene here, which I always have problems with it streaking if I apply it like this, but I took a chance and it seemed to work out just fine. It was a bit of a moist piece of sheep's wool that I was applying it with. Now, I use a spray gun almost exclusively, but a lot of times on this channel I do things that I think people will be doing themselves. If you're using Resolene, just get the hang of it because a moist sponge and making sure you don't have bubbles is key, and making sure you don't streak it as well. So it turned out pretty good. The rest of it, I spray it because I was a little worried about streaking and I didn't really trust the sheep's wool as much as I could have. Now, because we've got a resist on it, I've applied my antique gel into all the cracks and then wiped it away, which makes everything pop a lot more. Afterwards, I learned of something recently where you take a little bit of tan coat and rub it over the piece to pick up any remaining antique gel. I did that. There was a marginal difference in how it looks. I wouldn't call it mandatory at all. And then we apply a final coat of finish, which is the same as the resist, and do some little touch-ups with our paint and paintbrush. I wanted to try something a little different and use a diamond chisel and make sure that I was just putting down a line to follow and punching my holes that made sense. Because lining everything up on this many parts, it would be a little bit of a pain. And also super slow. So honestly, in the future, I'm not sure how often I'm going to do specific exact holes when you can just do a stitch line and punch it through with your diamond wherever you want. We'll see. But this turned out really good. So for the first go at this kind of patterning, I thought it worked out really well. but I guess you'll be the judge of that. Now, when I'm beveling these edges, I am making sure I'm just beveling the parts that I know won't change. When we're gluing everything together and punching our holes, there'll be some trimming and some sanding, so you don't need to bevel around all the edges. You'll see this later. Because of how saturated I make these pieces, they turn out a lot darker than the cover, because the cover is mostly painting and a lot of quick use of my wool dauber. Now, because this is so saturated, at least all of them are the same in color. So the inside of the wallet is a lot darker than the outside. We're going to use some Tokonol here to burnish the edges up. I've got it in a little squeeze bottle for ease of use. And we're just going to use this hand burnisher. I do have a motorized burnisher. Hand burnisher is just fine for this. Same kind of process as the cover though. We're going to oil it and put a finish on it. This time I'm spraying it with a siphon feed spray that I've just recently started using. I've been using paint guns in the past. I'm going to do a lot more on airbrushing, both with dyes, paints, and finishes and resists, so stay tuned for that. The snap on this was a little too long and the leather was super thin, so on my pattern I actually go through the top and the lining to put the snap on. Just make sure you don't forget about it before you stitch everything on, because that'll be a big pain in the butt. I don't like to use barge specifically, but the LePage stuff doesn't smell like you're dying every time you open it. Now we're just going to do some marks for where we're roughing, because we're going to glue this down. Just like I talked about earlier, not beveling spots that might be sanded or trimmed down, that right there is another example of that. I shouldn't be putting a line on there yet because I need to glue this down, trim everything up, and sand it. Luckily, everything lined up perfectly, but it could have been a small disaster if I had to sand away some of this pocket piece that I'm putting on, because then my line would be in totally the wrong spot. I should have sewn up the two bottom sides and then layered that third piece on top of here and then stitched the center all together. I didn't, not because I thought it would be better this way, but because I forgot. Here I am getting to some of that trimming. It's going to be really hard to make your two halves match up perfectly if you're carving it, because carving the leather is going to change the shape just a tiny bit. So after we've trimmed it, we can take it over to the sander and just do a little bit of extra refinement if there's any spots that need it. Then we can bevel all the way around both sides, put our stitch mark on it, and punch our holes. Now that it's all stitched together, we just need to dye the edge, apply some Tokonole, and burnish it up to a nice gloss. This wouldn't really be a biker wallet if it didn't have a chain and clasp to attach to your belt. So I'm going to make something here that has a similar look and shape to the wallet itself. I actually glue two pieces of leather together and stitch it just like the wallet. I dye it so it's the similar colors to the wallet on the inside and the outside. Might be a little excessive, but it turned out really nice. Another note here is that I have cut my Resolene with a 50-50 mix, so it's 50% water, 50% Resolene. Something new I'm experimenting with after reading some forums, so we'll see how it works out. Seems like it worked out just fine. I might need a second coat, but I think it's alright. There's no reason for this concho to ever come out of here, so use some Loctite on any threads for leatherwork that you think should never come out, because they might if you're not careful. So the YouTube algorithm is a strange and mythical beast, so if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe for future videos, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my future content. Also, feel free to leave a comment down below, maybe a video you want to see, or a question you want answered. I almost exclusively do one-offs, so this one-of-a-kind wallet by myself will be available on my website until somebody buys it. I'm going to throw another video right up here for you guys. Make sure you have a look at it. I think that wallet turned out fantastic. Hopefully you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed making it. Make sure you check out my website for patterns and artwork. And until next time, keep on being creative in whatever it is you do.